In this lecture, we'll learn about conditionals in JavaScript, which is if-else statements. So if you wonder, we have to just attack the websites or just try the XSS attacks or just hunt for the XSS in the browser in the upcoming lecture, but why we are simply not studying about the verb directly. Instead, we are just learning some of the basics of a JavaScript. So that might be the question, but if you just see, we are just learning or making the base in the JavaScript, so that we'll just learn about how to make the payload in the upcoming lectures, because making the payload would be very important in order to just crack some of the websites which would be highly secure. So you have to just have some of the basics of a JavaScript, and it can be also useful in the upcoming lecture to just create the keylogger using the JavaScript. So we are just making some of the basics or basics foundation in the JavaScript, so that it would be easier for us in the latest section in order to just make the simple payload or advanced payload using the JavaScript, and obviously using the verb suit in order to crack or hunt for the XSS attack. So first of all, let's see the JavaScript if-else statement in this lecture. So first of all, what is the conditionals? So conditionals is the way in order to execute the code in the condition either it is true or the false. So we'll have the conditions, some condition that is either true or a false, and based on that we'll just execute some part of the code. So you have something that is if statement, if else statement, and if else if statement in the JavaScript. So let's see how if else statement work in the JavaScript. So first of all, you have to just give this if all in the lowercase, which is the keyword, simply saying I need the if else condition, and just give this parenthesis in order to just provide the expression over here. So expression can be the logical expression or the mathematical expression over here, and after that you'll just give this block that will notify that you are just executing some of these statements over here. So if the expression is true in this case, that means the code inside this block will be executed. If it is not, the code inside this else block will be executed. So let's see the example right away. So let me just say something that is simply if 12 is lesser than 56, which is obviously true, and we are just making use of that colon, which is the Python code, not in the JavaScript. So I'll just say console.log, which is basically the print statement in the JavaScript, and I'll just say 56 is bigger, which is true obviously. So I'll just go down, and if I just print this, then you'll see 56 is bigger has been printed over here, because it has checked this condition, and if this condition is true, and in that case the code inside this block will be executed, and of course this statement is true. If it was false, it would not just console anything over here. So let me say if 56 is lesser than 12, which is obviously false. If I just hit enter, it will just say undefined. It will not print anything because we don't have anything for the false part, which is basically your else part. So let's put that else part. So I'll just say else, which is the way to describe for the false part, and I'll just say console mean, that is the another message that is false. I'll just say false, and if I just execute this now, then you will see false has been printed over here, because in this case 12 is not greater than 56. That means the code inside this block won't be executed, but the code inside this else will be executed because it is false. It will only execute, or the block inside of this if will only execute if the condition inside here would be true, which in this case is false. So this is the execution of code based on your true or false, which is basically your boolean part. So you could see over here, that is, we have made use of this simple code which is if else in order to predict where the execution would be. So you can simply make a logic over here. Let me just say if and a, which is in this case, let me just define a first. Variable a would be, let me say 20, or you can simply get that variable from the user, but in this case I'll not do that. So I'll just say if a, which is basically that same variable, and this percentage sign is for the modulo. That means it will just give you a reminder, and if you just get that remainder, not the reminder, it is remainder, and if you just get that remainder, and if it is 0, that means you'll just say console.log, and you should have guessed that this number is even. So a is even. So in this case you can simply see a is even, because a modulo 2, which is basically 20, modulo of 2, which is giving us a remainder of 0, and 20 is obviously the even. So if you just make use of this code, and let me just go right down here, and you can simply see that we're not taking something like the condition for the else. So I'll just put here else, and in that else part I'll just say console.log, which is odd, so which is not true basically, because a is here your variable which is even. So if I just create another variable, that is again the a, let me say 89, and now again execute the same code, then you will see that is odd has been printed, because now a is 89. And you can simply see that when you just change from variable over here which was even to odd, it is dynamically typed. So if I just create something like, instead of 89, you can also put here false. So now a has been changed to boolean, which was number over here, but it has been changed to boolean right here. So that means JavaScript also known as the dynamic type language, same as Python. So you can simply see over here we made use of if else statement to execute the code based on this condition. So you can also make use of if and else if condition if you have multiple conditions. So let me just take a simple example over here how this if and else if work. So let me say var a, let me just give this 20, and let me just make a simple condition which is if a is equal, which will just check if a is equal to, let me say 10, and let me just say that if it is the case, and I'll just say console.log. In that case I'll just say something like a is equal to 10, which is simple message over here. And if it is not the case, which is obviously undefined over here, and let me just go down, and if it is not the case, then we'll just make use of this else if statement. So else if statement is basically taking another variable over here which is the condition, and I'll just check if it is 15, and in that case I'll just say console.log, and a is 15, which is obviously false because a is 20. So the last would be else, and I'll just pass here console.log, and a is not found. So obviously a is not found will be printed because a is 20. We have the condition which is obviously false in both of here. So a is equal 10 is also false, a is equal 15 also false. That means the else part will be executed because this both of the condition is false, and else part is basically a is not found is printed. So you can make use of these conditionals in order to execute some part of code, and in order to redirect your execution to another point, and making your code flow smoother with the help of if statement. So this will be wrap for this lecture. So now we have just made some foundation with the if else statement. In the next lecture we'll learn about loop and a function and some of the non-primitive data type, and we'll just start learning about the verb and start attacking the live website. So see you in the next one.